Good morning, YouTube! Griever, your host as always, ladies and gentlemen, bringing you the second episode of Bleach Review. Let's get right underway with this one, because the first, of course, episode review was quite long. Had to explain what the series was about, talk about the main character a little bit, my feelings towards Ichigo, that kind of stuff, and a couple of plot points that still to this day make no sense. But, that being said, we are here for the second episode. And this one deviated quite a bit here and there with locations, conversations, how things went down from the manga. But as I said in the last review, I won't be making this series to just be a manga to anime comparison. I'm not going to be reading every chapter as I watch every episode. So that's not the point of this content. But I did just happen to read this one, and there were some differences, but I don't think it made or break anything necessarily in the series, because this episode actually has a really good speech. There's a slight difference, one major difference that I noticed that I think might matter in the grand scheme of things, is that once we start this episode, we have Ichigo, of course, thinking, okay, what's going to happen? Everybody's injured and stuff, and his lovable father, Isshin Kurosaki, wakes him up by trying to dropkick him. And, of course, Ichigo talks to him and says, what about the wounds and the injuries? And says, what's that? Apparently a semi-truck crashed into the clinic and nobody was hurt. So there has been a memory lapse here for some reason. And we're going to find that out, of course, later. We all know what happens. And he goes to school wondering what nobody seems to remember. No one remembers me fighting. Nobody remembers the hollow. Nobody remembers the attacks. Everyone's wounds are healed. What's going on? That's when he finally goes to class. A slightly different meeting here between Orihime and Ichigo, and their interactions are quite a bit different from the manga. The big thing is that Rukia is, of course, in the class and writes on her hand, if you say anything, you're dead. So Ichigo and her start talking. And when they're finally, able to get away in private. And the conversation goes the exact same. It's simply, okay, you basically took all my powers last night. I meant to only lend you part of my powers just to kill that hollow, but you ended up taking almost all of it, if not all of it. So I have very little power left. I'm in this thing called a Gigai. That's why people can see me, but they can't know I'm a Soul Reaper, yada, yada, yada. Now, she says, you have to do my job for me now. And he goes, nope. Now, in the case that I explained in the last episode about Ichigo as a character, most main characters of shonen would love to have a giant sword and go around swinging it at shit. Ichigo can't be bothered. He just found out about these things called hollows that are monsters. He finds out that he can just wield a giant-ass sword whenever he feels like and have super strength. And he is not a typical teenage boy because he does not give a shit. A lot of people say it's almost unrealistic how Ichigo behaves in this way. But actually, once again, I found it very refreshing because now the situation is reversed. Usually you have, if a main character in this situation gets these powers, the other characters continuously try to take these powers back, or say you're being irresponsible, or you can't go nuts, you can't go crazy, Luffy, get back here, Asta, stop, those type of things. Ichigo's just like, no, I don't want anything to do with it. I'm done, I don't need to slay monsters, I don't need a giant sword, I'm good, I did that to protect my family and my friends, sort of idea. That was a one-time deal to protect, that's it. This is where we get a fantastic speech, and the one main difference that I really wanted to point out is the speech here is done very well, Johnny Young Bosch, of course, where they go to this park as Rukia puts on the soul glove and smacks Ichigo's Shinigami form out of his main body, and he's now in his soul form. They go to this park where there's a young little boy being chased by a hollow, a soul being chased by a hollow. This is where Rukia brings up the point that you don't want to do the job. You can't just nitpick just because something is in front of you. There are countless souls. As a Soul Reaper, your job is to treat all souls equally. One soul is not better than another one. Just because this situation is happening in front of you, you don't get to cherry pick. Stop being so arrogant. You don't get to make that choice. You either are all in or you're not in at all. The difference here is that it ends up the same. Ichigo takes all this in, realizes he's either got to commit or not. He has a speech which is similar in the manga, but in the anime, it's much more impactful and powerful, where he says, "You telling me that I can't save someone in front of me? I don't care. You weren't doing that when you saved me last night. That's not exactly... You weren't thinking about duty and what's good for a Soul Reaper and all this stuff. You weren't thinking about that. You were simply thinking about trying to protect and save me. Same way, I see this happening in front of me, I'm going to do something about it." The difference here is that in the manga, he agrees to take over the Soul Reaper responsibilities. He says, "I can commit for now, I owe you a debt, and I'm all in." Here in the anime, did I miss something? Because he does not agree to that. He says, it's a much more impactful speech in this way, where he says, "I'm going to do things my way. I'm not saying that I'm going to be doing this every single day, or I'm going to do it the way you want me to. But if I see somebody in danger, I'm going to help them. That's just the way I am." And so automatically we get some character, not necessarily development, it's what we already knew, but now we know that Ichigo is always going to be the protector. He's not going to let somebody, he sees somebody beat up in an alleyway, he's going to go and help them. That's Ichigo. And the more we learn about Ichigo, the more we see that that has always been him as a character. Getting these powers has not changed that fact. And being a Soul Reaper, he's not a born and bred Soul Reaper in that way. So their rules and laws and the way their ethics don't affect him. They don't matter to him, because he is only there as a protector. And this is really a great way to separate what makes Ichigo different and how he's able to change the characters that he meets later on in the series with this same core attitude. It never really wavers for the majority of the series, and it's just really great to see. But in the manga, he agrees right away. In the anime, he's like, "No, I'm still just going to do things my way," and he grumbles off. So, to me, honestly, that was handled better. Of course, in the manga, you need to push the story along. The anime, of course, has bigger budget, more time, things like that, can adapt things, can, fill things in a little better. But in this way, it actually felt more impactful. The later half of the episode follows, of course, the story of Orihime and Orihime's brother being the next hollow that Ichigo is going to encounter. This next half of the episode, though handled a little differently, doesn't have any major differences worth noting. We simply get the reveal that, Ichigo did not know that a hollow, he simply thought, oh, it's a demon. It's a monster. Got to kill it. Rukia explains, they are monsters. But all these hollows, all these demons were once humans. They've turned into monsters. Ichigo was not aware of this. Rukia explains all this. And it's kind of, because this is where Ichigo's, when he's in the bedroom and stuff, we get the hilarious scene that Rukia is now living in Ichigo's closet. That's for a good running gag for a long running time in the series. And they are attacked by Orihime's brother, who has been turned into a hollow. A big difference here is that we also see, like the first episode, we actually see the deserts of Hueco Mundo and the hollows forming. We see Orihime's brother taken by the hollows and transformed into one, and also, it seems, on the orders of Grand Fisher. This is not present in the manga as far as I know, and I'm not saying it takes away or adds anything necessarily, but it is an interesting take. We get more in-depth in this way. It's all time back. They're trying to make the Shinigami arc not just be a week-to-week by, monster of the week sort of formula before we get into the main story of Bleach, which, of course, starts off with the whole rescue arc, the Soul Society arc. That's when the main story really starts to kick off. Instead of doing that, the anime tries to adapt there's one overarching overlord. There's one main bad guy of this shorter beginning arc that needs to be defeated, that's manipulating things from the shadows. I think that's the feel they're going for here, and I don't mind it so much. The episode ends off after this, where Rukia and Ichigo, of course, have their conversation. She explains all what hollows are and how they behave and all that such. And Ichigo's having mixed feelings about this, and Orihime is about to be attacked, along with Tatsuki, who is there, with her friend, hanging out because Orihime's brother died 3 years ago, and he became a hollow. And in the anime, it's depicted it literally happened this day, sort of idea. So, anyways, that's the second episode. I thought it was pretty good for a setup. Not a whole lot major really happened. Other than, once again, sort of we're establishing the more characters. We have Rukia now. We had Rukia. We have the introduction of Chads here. We have Orihime, Tatsuki, and more explanation about the Bleach universe, about Hollows and what they're supposed to do, and Soul Reaper's duties, and etc. So, a good setup episode, and I'm going to start jumping right into episode 3 here, ladies and gentlemen. So, hope you all had a good morning. Like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys back here for episode 3. See you later.